So you're probably wondering why we're dressed like this. And the reason is because we wanted to. So that's what's happening right now. The reason why we're kind of doing this segment and reaching out in this way is that one of the things we try to be is incredibly transparent to our community. We want to make sure that you guys understand kind of where we're coming from, why we do this work, and also what has been going on with us. So we kind of wanted to talk about chronic illness, maybe a little bit in the more general sense, but also really just kind of talking about the things that we're dealing with and kind of explore kind of how that impacts the channel and things like that. So we'll see where it goes. I don't know where we're going to necessarily go, but
yeah, well, and I definitely know that there's us, and there's definitely a lot of people in our community that deal with chronic illness, right? And so it's something that I certainly struggle with finding support for or figuring out how to conceptualize. And no, chronic illness absolutely affects my mental health in lots of ways, So
yeah. So I guess who wants to start? Do we want to each talk about the things we're dealing with and then kind of talk about it in a broader sense?
That or just timeline. I don't know. There we go. I didn't have a plan here.
You didn't have a plan? Okay, we're going in blind. Okay, so let's just talk about what we're dealing with and we can kind of try to wrap it all together.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of start. And so for people that don't understand, so I'm not dealing with a ton of things. More of my stuff tends to be more of emotional and sort of learning to do more self-care. My job is hard. I also deal with the fact that I have a child who has special needs and also a partner who is dealing with much more severe chronic illness than myself. I also have regular migraines. There are things I can take for these, but usually about 1 day a week I'm completely debilitated for at least an hour. Sometimes longer. Before I started having more medications and having the preventative I have in me, they could last an entire night. One of the things that I've had to be very clear with on the server is to be very careful about not handling other people's stuff and making boundaries. I've done this in calls before. And the reason why I had to do that is because I can't have enough emotional energy for my partner and for my kid and for my clients and be sort of there in that therapist context or even just a support context at various times. So what I have to do is sometimes kind of tell people I really don't have spoons for this or I really can't do this. That's some of the difficulties I deal with. And I will also mention another one real quick is that this stuff doesn't get talked about a ton because I think, we always want to put on a positive face, but being a trans woman does come with its own series of things. Most notably, let me be really super clear. My boobs constantly hurt. All it takes is a solid elbow and I'm out of the fucking race. Just done. And beyond that, estrogen has had a really weird effect on my emotional states, where I used to have much more control and was much more able to deal with irritability and things like that. That stuff seems to have gotten worse. And some of that could be due to effects of COVID on neurology. Some of it could be just dealing with, it could be just being in quarantine. Yeah, Jason here. That's what I've heard is a lot of trans men, not all of them, but some trans men really do experience a decrease in their emotions or a much more sort of muting of emotions. Well, for me, it's just mood swings like a bitch.
Well, and it's funny because Jess seems to be reacting the way that I used to be. And I seem to be going the other direction as well. I tend to experience... So, for me, with XRT in my system, I tend to experience the emotional shifts really, really well, really, right away. And I don't... It seems like most people, would have to be on T longer than me. But again, I'm also in a body that is sensitive to hormones. Okay? And so for me, the location changed of where they kind of feel in my body, and how they come up in my body and what order, right, they happen in also kind of shifted. So it's not that they're muted, just that they are different in a different location. But I guess if you're going the other direction, it would probably feel like things suddenly got really loud.
Well, and the problem is, at least for myself, is that the issue is that I have a personality disorder. I don't talk about it a lot on the channel, though I have done entire segments on it. I am diagnosed with not just ADHD, but borderline personality disorder. That means that if I was to make a guess, there are probably about 4 or 5 criteria within the 9 that are there that I probably still show. It's probably around 4, which means I wouldn't make the cut, but it's still very much a part of who I am. And one of the things that a lot of people with BPD deal with are emotions turned up to 11. When we feel something, we feel it. And that was true when I identified as male. When I identify now as whatever the hell I am, girl plus, um, the issue now is that it's very hard to sort of figure out which is what. Like, what is the BPD? What is it that's causing that? I'll give you a perfect example. So me and Zena have our relationship is complicated, but there are open portions of it. And so one of the things that often happens is, like, there are friends of mine that I will flirt with. For example, the person I got the schoolgirl outfit from, person I flirted with and played with just over messages. What's interesting about that situation is that Zena had no fucking problem with it. Actually, Zena was like cool as a fucking cucumber. I had a panic attack because I thought my relationship would be ending. I thought my partner would be so mad at me that I completely crumpled. And so, like, that's some of the stuff there, because, like, some of that's the BPD, but to experience at that point where I'm nearly in tears, like, I can cry almost not quite on command, but it's getting there. But that, like, gives you an insight, is like, there wasn't actually even a problem. My partner didn't even have a freaking issue with it, and yet I did, partially because of my own baggage around sexuality, but also because of very real fears about the effects of what was going to potentially happen. Right? Like, that stuff really sucks. So that gives you an insight into me. There's, anxiety, depressions in there too occasionally, but, like, those are the big ones. Borderline's one of the ones that's really hard sometimes, because sometimes in Discord calls we'll have conversations with people in this community, and I'll get reactive towards them, and I don't mean to. And then I have to go through and catch it and go, oh shit, what did I do? I've had to apologize to a couple of members of our community because of me taking a joke or an idea too far, and having to kind of do like, trying to figure out how to do and interact with that stuff. Hell, there was a conversation we were having in telling you about where my own paranoia is. I was having a conversation about, like, the fact that I own anime statues, and some of those characters are obviously, like, various ages, and the issue is like, I just like the statues, but I was legitimately afraid of bringing that cabinet in here, because the concern would be is that I don't want to be judged for that shit, because there are members of the online left who will crucify you for liking My Hero Academia. And so, like, I had a really good conversation with my friend Netspace, who's in chat right now, as well as the dearest and wonderful Gay Fesh, and a few other people. And we left the conversation. It seemed like everyone was cool. I flipped out. I had a panic attack because I was very afraid of not only cancellation from the trans community, because I love you guys dearly, but Jesus Christ, sometimes you can be aggressive as shit. But not just them, but just also, like, these people that I've come to respect. I literally had a panic attack for fearing that I was going to lose those relationships. You can even hear it in my voice right now. Just talking about it is still really intense. And those accusations that you see in those conversations are really hard too, because I'm a survivor of, CSA. So it's like there's an additional level of, like, that stuff's really hard. So I guess my overall point is this kind of gives you a kind of more broad picture of the things that I deal with. I've actually tried to, like, I've actually thought about doing an entire video about everything I possibly could be canceled for, or everything that I've ever done that was bad, just so there was no surprises. I'm 40. Jesus Christ. Have I made mistakes? The reason I don't do it, Tiamat, is because legitimately I've been told by several people that care about me that they don't think I should do that because they think that it would be harmful to myself. Right? So that's where I'm coming from, and I'm trying to get really clear to everyone what my psychology is like. And kind of how, it's not typical physical chronic illness, but for me, these are things that I deal with. Does that make sense? So that's my side of things. So what's going on with you, Zena?
Hi.
I love you.
I love you too.
Here you go.
I love you.
I love you. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Life got weird.
True.
So one of the things I hate most about chronic illness is that it deals with parts of the body that I don't have a ton of knowledge about. Like, I don't have a medical degree, okay? Most people don't just have a medical degree. But that is, in fact, what I find is needed to understand what the hell's going on with me. And so some things I understand better than others. I've learned to kind of troubleshoot a lot of things pretty well. But that's really hard, especially when I'm dealing with a variety of things. So in November, I had like a stomach bug, and that really sucked. That was really painful, and that kind of was what interrupted us during, trying to get the Matrix stuff done. And I guess one of the things that can happen is your gut can kind of shut down afterwards, and so basically my small intestines were releasing a lot of gas into my body and not like letting it out properly. So that uh um thanks, love. Trying to even figure out what was going on was really confusing because there was so much extra brain fog. I went into PMDD right after, which causes its own massive amounts of sets of symptoms. And so I guess slowly over the last couple of months, like the brain fog's been getting worse and worse. I've been getting tired. I've been having to miss like all of my PT appointments, which of course I'm doing, PT for migraines. Okay, so trying to solve one issue and not actually being able to do it. And I don't think we really fully realized what was going on until like a few weeks ago. Until like my doctor had me do like a test diet just to see if that would calm things down. And so if the answer was yes, that diet worked, the next course would be okay, go on antibiotics, which I'm now on finally. But it wasn't until I had those couple of days without brain fog and without symptoms that I was like, oh, wait a minute. Because like I'm used to dealing with chronic illness, but like that level of brain fog just took everything and just confused it all together. And so like there's a lot of stuff coming up. Things that would normally be like, okay, hey, I noticed this thing. Cool. I can kind of deal with that, right? I can kind of process it and just let it go eventually, okay? Were like things that I would stay stuck on for a really long time or would just morph into something different and wake more extreme in my head. God, this shit's been rough. Like, no, I just haven't been functioning. Like, we had a laundry pile in our living room that's been massive for a while. And so unfortunately, like the things that I tend to do in the house while just is working is I do a lot of the stuff outside of the house, right? I go pick up medications, take care of, I would take care of laundry when possible or pick up things, just picking up around the house as well as being out of the house to go get whatever's needed, grocery shopping and all of that, take care of our bun. And I haven't been able to do any of that, so it's just been kind of like stress all around. And yeah, no, it's That one's really rough. There's a lot of pain. Like, it hurt to eat basically all the time. Because again, there's so much gas building up in my stomach. I think they weighed me, and I was like, I would normally, like, if I looked like this normally, I would have been 15 pounds heavier. Like, I was very underweight, but still had so much bloating. Yeah, no, it's always weird coming out of those spaces too, coming out of that funk, because looking back at it, like, I get it. I get that it happened, and also it feels like very foreign and weird. But when you're in it, it just feels like huge and extreme and like it won't end. And I have a lot of stuff around food. Food, Jess knows this too. Like, I deal with IBS, so there's a number of food triggers there. I can't have dairy because that's an active migraine trigger, and eczema and a few other things. So my diet's already really restricted, and then to have to, like, also have trouble eating and keeping food down, and not keeping food, but no, like, eating enough, because it would again start hurting because there's so much bloating. No, that really fucks with me. I think that's the hard part too. Like, one of the things in our relationship is just dealing with, like, no, just does kind of have to, like, learn all of these complicated things and deal with all these complicated side effects, and somehow be outside my brain when I can't accurately word or talk or say the right word for what's going on. Even a couple weeks ago, the medication I was on, I got all the side effects from. I think 90% on that list. It really was a long list. God damn it. And we, God, I don't think I moved out of bed. But still trying to, like, be around, track all of that, figure out what's going out when it looks like I'm basically hyperventilating. Okay. Really fucking rough.
Yeah. I mean, and you mentioned them a bit, but, like, you're still dealing with migraines. You're on a medication for that that's preventative. We both take auto injector once a month of something, Amovig, which is helpful. But, like, on top of that, like, I need people to understand, like, with Zena, one of the things that really sucks for them is like, basically all of their favorite foods got cut off. Maybe not every single one of them, but a good number. We've found workarounds for certain things. Zena can make a badass biscuits and gravy, and instead of it being a dairy-based gravy, it's like cauliflower and like
nutritional yeast, and it's still meaty and good.
Yeah, it's really good. But, like, there's some things that we can't like duplicate. Like, for example, like, there's a ramen place in a town near us that is bomb, and the problem is that, like,
so
it's full of garlic and onion.
So it was, I did the FODMAP. That was last year. That took like 6 to 8 months for me because I was having gallbladder issues. You can't really do, like, the tests when you have other things going on. So, like, no, if my period's kind of making me have diarrhea, I can't do, like, a test food for that to see if it's going to affect me, because I won't know the difference between the food and just my normal body functions. Okay. So that one took a while. So we found that trigger foods for me are fruit tans in gluten-containing wheats, and garlic and onions, which also have fruit tans in them. So there's a few ways around it, but no garlic and onion basically means, like, I don't get to eat out, like, anywhere. I gotta be honest, relearning how to cook without dairy was a lot easier and a lot tastier, honestly. I don't really miss cow dairy at this point. I really don't.
We found a really good workaround in a certain type of well-made goat cheese that's like a jack, and it basically is universally good in most things.
Yeah, I can have goat cheese. Cashews can get used. Coconut milk. There's a lot of neat ways to do non-dairy stuff. But wheat I've been finding much, much harder. In fact, the grocery store usually doesn't, like, have things in stock. And so, chronic illness, I used to rely on, okay, at least having, I try and cook when I can, but there at least be, like, various freezer meals or things that I could just heat up, right? Or snacks that I could eat. And at this point, there's a few, like, of those, like, tiny granola bars, okay, that are, like, not going to fill you up. That's about all. Like, I don't get the luxury of being like, okay, we've got some pizzas in the freezer, just heat one up when you need something real quick. Like that's a luxury that I just don't have anymore. And yeah, it's God, that stuff fucks with me. So
So the thing is you're probably wondering like why we're bringing this up, and I think for me the goal of this discussion is I want to give context. So when we talk about Zena dealing with chronic illness and unable to work, or we talk about Jess having a difficult time, or whatever's happening, we want you guys to be clear on what that means. One of the things that I think is really important is as streamers is, at least for me and Zena, we want to be as direct as possible. And so when we say that like your guys' support really means a lot, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. Or like, and I don't mean just like support like donos, I mean like the the liking the videos, the making sure to comment, making sure to support support us in various ways. That stuff is really helpful. And it means a great deal because we can figure out more workarounds because we have more resources to do that. One of the tensions we're kind of stuck with because of this, with these different dynamics, is, as I mentioned before, my child has both autism and ADHD, and they're lovely. But the problem is that there's things they really struggle with. Mindfulness is a huge one. They really have a hard time like thinking before they act, and so the problem is a lot of times they forget what they needed to do in a situation that we've gone over 4 times.
And there's quotes on forget, not because actually forgetting is the issue, but it seems like there are other mechanisms at play that forgetting is the shorthand word for saying that.
Yeah. And so the thing is that like we're kind of right now we're in this interesting tension where it's like we want to find them as many resources as possible because we want to make sure they're able to be independent, right? They're 21 going on 22. But then there's also the question about like us being able to take care of ourselves, and sometimes there's not enough energy to go around, so stuff gets dropped, like the laundry in the living room, or not getting to dishes that night, or sometimes a stream has to be canceled, or maybe we don't get to stream as much as we want,
or trying to get services and all that sort of stuff going takes a
time
really long
and energy
time. Yeah.
and work. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the really hard part when we talk about chronic illness and disability is that not the things that people need for different stuff are not always compatible. Okay. I also deal with multiple chemical sensitivities, and if somebody like this is hypothetical, but if somebody forgets and comes over with a lot of like deodorant or like hairspray on, no, I'm gonna get a migraine, and I can't be next to them. And so trying to keep track of all of those things, right, can be a lot. It can be really difficult to keep track of. Jess and I have a hard enough time. We plan hair dye days try to plan them very carefully and trying to find ones that don't affect us as much. But it's this battle of dysphoria versus, migraines, right? That's the choice we make. It is. I think on a personal level, I think you and I just struggle talking about this stuff too. I think a lot of people with chronic illness struggle with that.
Yeah, I would agree.
So
I think my overall point with all this is just to make it really clear to people that like the reason why our channel runs differently than a lot of YouTube streamers is that we're kind of dealing with a lot of background stuff that you guys don't always get to see or don't always get to interact with. There are times where we make plans like the movie nights and we get to them. We actually are able to do them. But there's times when we have issues with like, say, the Matrix movies where, we had to find time to do a certain number of watches and try to make it as effective as possible. And what ends up happening is we kind of fall behind or don't always get to the goal we want. That's something we've had to learn how to be able to do, is sometimes be okay with what we can do now.
Limited time is rough.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like, there's spoons and there's time when you're making those plans, and then you get to them, and then, like, shit just changes, and nope, that's not what you've got anymore. Yeah, that's a real rough one. I had a thought or something. Oh, and one of our values, right, is trying to be like as accommodating to the stuff as possible, right? Like meeting people where they're at and what they're able to do, and that means that we've got to do that for ourselves as well, as hard as that is. And so I think that's kind of a big one here. It's just that's kind of why videos some weeks might be a little bit slower, or we might be reaching out for help with stuff.
Well, I'll give you an example is like because Zena's been so down and been so completely out because of this stomach issue, I haven't been able to work on videos as much. Now, luckily, we have a really nice editor who's helping us for pennies on the dollar, and I love him dearly. But, it takes time for him to get those things back to me. So when I send them over, for example, I now have all of the segments from the last 2 streams that you guys have not seen yet. 2 of them went up as of Saturday and Sunday. But because I needed content to go out now, because we basically hadn't had anything in a minute, I didn't get to post those early for Patreon. So my plan was I was going to send out a letter to all the patrons and basically apologize, because sometimes I have to send things out as they come rather than wait for the 8-hour period, because I'm watching the numbers drop because we're not having that reoccurring engagement with a new video or new something, So
Yeah.
it's really hard because like you have to make those apologies and you have to make those things. So I guess my point with all this, and we won't ramble on this too much longer, but I guess I just want you guys to understand the stuff that we're dealing with and understand that, when you're interacting with this channel or you're interacting with, our community, understand like that's some of the stuff that affects us.
Do we want to see if people have any questions, or?
I mean, we can. If anyone has any quick questions they want to throw out there, please do.
Yeah, again, like I said, I know a lot of people deal with, chronic illness. Jess and I are trying to figure out the best ways to work with this stuff and be okay with it. That's a struggle, especially for me, because God, this stuff, it's out of nowhere. But if you guys have any questions, I also deal with vulvodynia. All right, this might be TMI, but I got to be open about this. I don't have to be, but I want to, because no one talks about it. Vulvodynia is the word for your vulva hurts, and we don't know why. Yeah. Yeah, it's awful. It just flares up sometimes, and I'm like, am I having a yeast infection? Am I having, BV or UTI? Yeah. It could be any of those, or multiple, or are my parts just freaking out for the sake of freaking out? It means that, sitting for long periods can hurt, like, standing for long periods could hurt, too tight of pants could hurt. And there's not any good data to deal with this shit. There's a bunch of suggestions and I do what I can. But it is something that does affect me, and and there are some things you can try, but I think that's probably some of the hardest stuff to talk about that exists. So
yeah. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions, so if we need to answer one off this segment, we can. But I think we should. I think we kind of made you guys more aware, which I think was the goal. So, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, just do the best you can. I mean, that's the most that Jess and I can do, and you guys do the best you can too.
All right, guys. Lots of love. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, consider donating to us. You can support us on our website, transgirltherapist.org. You can also help us on our Patreon, link below, or you can become a member here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.